Tom Fitton is joining us now from Judicial Watch. Tom, you guys are doing such a great job. I don't know if I tell you that enough when you come on the show, but you're doing the work that all these supposedly great media institutions should be doing, and you're doing it with a fraction of their budget.
Yeah. The journalists have become gossip mongers, more or less.
Yeah. And fictionaires.
Thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, Tom, this latest, you filed a FOIA request to get some FBI documents, and it didn't take you, in comparative terms, it didn't take you that long to get them, did it? About 6 months?
Yeah, these are the documents about the leaks.
And the FBI, and the people being punished, the FBI agents and being punished, or in most cases not punished, right?
Yeah, this is we got a group of documents without having to sue, and they show that the Office of Professional Responsibility had 14 referrals for agents who were leaking sensitive and/or classified information, to include grand jury information. Only 4 of them were fired. Several got less than the recommended punishments, and none have been prosecuted yet.
What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you that the FBI has this culture of corruption where you can get away with doing a lot that would get other people prosecuted.
You know, talking about grand jury testimony, I remember one time receiving what they thought was grand jury testimony as a reporter in Boston in a political corruption case, and they audited me. They threatened to drag me before a grand jury. I mean, do you think there's a little bit of, and also the lawyer that they thought had leaked it to me, do you think there's a little bit of a double standard here for themselves as opposed to, say, reporters and defense attorneys?
Yeah, excuse me. But, the problem from the documents, though, we got the listing, but they didn't give us the details.
Yeah.
Although we were able to figure out that the number 2 FBI official at the time, Andrew McCabe, was one of those who were fired. So we don't know the details of whether it was grand jury versus classified versus just law enforcement sensitive. But these are the sorts of questions that are raised when you get over a dozen, in many ways it looks like senior officials, at least 2 of them were, referred for leaking things improperly, and not much is done in response. Now, some were fired, but, remember, the OPR, they didn't think that Strzok should be fired. So these guys are, the supposed internal watchdog doesn't necessarily go as far and as aggressive as you think. So the fact that even their weak recommendations in some cases weren't followed up on shows you the culture of unaccountability at the FBI.
And, I just occur, I'm here in Boston, and, we've had a lot of political and police corruption over the years. I can remember Boston police detectives who took free meals at a Hungarian restaurant, a nice place, but they were indicted, tried, convicted, and I think in a couple of cases they went to jail for a few months. I mean, that's what happens to corrupt cops, but not the FBI,
and
apparently.
If that's the corruption they're going after, my gosh, that sounds like a proof of the job as opposed to any corrupt act. I guess I'm old school in that regard.
Well, didn't the Inspector General's first report, or one of his first reports, say that Andrew McCabe not only had leaked these classified documents to national reporters, but he had also lied to federal agents, which is, I believe, obstruction of justice or perjury, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was referred for prosecution, and I think this is last year he was referred for prosecution. Nothing's happened yet. In fact, he just sued today, alleging he was fired improperly because President Trump was a terrible person and didn't win the popular vote. So I'm not exaggerating. That's the nature of this lawsuit.
So I didn't know that. I'll have to pull that lawsuit. So he lied, according to the Inspector General, who was appointed by Obama, incidentally, 4 times on the day that he was appointed or assumed the duties of acting director of the FBI. So he was following in the footsteps of J. Edgar Hoover. As corrupt as J. Edgar Hoover was accused of being over the years, I don't believe that on the day he was sworn in as FBI director, he committed 4 felonies. But according to the Inspector General, that's exactly what Andrew McCabe did.
Yeah, and the OPR report, without mentioning McCabe's name, essentially describes the allegations you're talking about. But you talk about Hoover. We also had the issue of Comey because we did get, thanks to a lawsuit, documents last week showing that the FBI went to his house a month after he was fired and received, he gives them back FBI memos he wrote about conversations he allegedly had with President Trump. And remember, and of course he didn't tell them he already was leaking them. And so he takes these records he's not supposed to have. He keeps them in his house, some of which are classified. He leaks. And again, the reports are nothing's going to be done. The IG has referred him for a criminal prosecution. And the news last week is that the DOJ doesn't want to do it.
I recall, too, you're talking about the FBI agents not being fired, even though they violated all sorts of regulations, if not laws, if it was grand jury material. When one of these IG report, Inspector General report came out, we had then Attorney General Jeff Sessions on this program. And I believe they mentioned that 50 FBI agents, I think mainly in the Washington headquarters, had accepted bribes. I mean, when I say bribes, I mean it could just be, tickets to a Redskins game or something like that from journalists in D.C. But Tom, as we talked about the Boston police detectives going to prison for taking free meals, I mean, a bribe is a bribe is a bribe, right? And so I asked.
Exactly, and the journalists obviously have an interest in taking care of the FBI officials for leak purposes. Just as I presume the allegation was, the restaurateur had an interest in taking care of the detectives by giving them free meals. Right.
It's good to have a cop in your restaurant, even if it's an upscale restaurant. Yeah, and you're not worried about being robbed. So, but I asked Jeff Sessions about this. I said, 50 FBI agents, you can call it what it is, but it's an illegal gratuity, as they say in the law. Why aren't these people being prosecuted? And he was going, you can't really prosecute everybody. Well, again, Tom, you and I are considered, let's be honest, enemies of the deep state. They'd go after you and me in an instant, wouldn't they?
Well, look how comprehensive their prosecution process was for going after those individuals involved in this college scam.
Varsity Blues. Yeah.
Right, where all the admissions were being gamed. There were many, many people caught up in that case, in that web. So if they want to, they can prosecute anyone they want, as many people as they want. And this is always a political decision. It's not a question of law and order. It's a question of politics. And, we have to recognize that. And so when people say we can't prosecute anyone, what they're really saying is we're making the political decision not to prosecute anyone. And, that may be a defensible decision, but let's just highlight it for what it is. It's a political decision as opposed to a law and order decision. And
it's also a double standard. And if you don't impose the same standard on everybody else, you are going to have immediately injustices in the system. You have to have one standard for everybody. That's common sense. The founding fathers certainly understood that.
Well, when you look at these emails and text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and I made this point with Tucker Carlson this week, Howie, you remember the old movie, The Untouchables.
Right.
That's normally seen as something positive because these folks were immune from corruption. But then you have this bureaucratic class here in Washington, D.C., and the leadership class in the FBI who thought they could say and do anything because they were, quote, untouchable. And we're just seeing proof of that day after day as these Spygate revelations keep on coming.
One of my texters says, wants me to ask you, will Attorney General Barr hold the corrupt officials accountable, or will the cover up for the institutions continue?
Well, I'm disappointed in his decision. I don't know if he made the decision specifically, but the decision not to prosecute Comey despite his taking and leaking those FBI files on President Trump. Everyone tells us big things are coming down the pike.
Yeah.
If they can't get this case where he admits to leaking information to get a special counsel appointed, prosecuted, I'm not quite sure how they're going to pursue more complicated cases. But we'll see.
You don't sound confident.
One can always hope.
You don't sound confident, Tom.
Well, when you run your investment ads, there's something I always said at the end quickly. Past experience or past results isn't an indication of future performance, right?
Right.
Well, it's a pretty good rule of thumb for politics, though. What's happened in the past is likely to happen in the future. And the X factor is Attorney General Barr, who seems to have a good head on his shoulders and is politically unafraid, and the president himself, who took the extraordinary needed step of getting rid of the FBI director, the corrupt FBI director, Comey.
So where can people go if they want to learn more about Judicial Watch?
They can go to our website at judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch1word.org.
Judicial Watch. You got anything good coming up? Any more release of documents that you think you're going to?
We're expecting any minute the infamous 302 reports, the FBI reports.
Oh, I love 302s.
Bruce Ward's communications with the Spygate people, Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, and such.
You got to get it before the traditional Friday news dump.
Well, they're supposed to give them to us today, and it's now almost 5 o'clock.
Almost 5 o'clock. I think we're looking at the Friday PM news dump for you, Tom. But we'll have our eyes open. We'll be waiting for it. All right, we're looking forward to those. Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. You guys are doing great. What's your web address again? One more time.
Judicialwatch.org, judicialwatch1word.org.
Thank you, Tom Fitton, and we'll get the story on McCabe, the disgraced crooked cop now suing the FBI to get his job back. Have these people no shame? I'm Howie Carr.